Welcome everyone to this webinar hosted by the HIA Charitable Foundation and Beyond Blue. My name is Pino Monaco and I'm the chair of the HIA Charitable Foundation. If you had told me at the start of 2020 that new home starts in Australia would be down to less than 110,000 in 2021, I would have accused you of hallucinating or worse. Unfortunately, that is the reality that our industry is facing as we approach June 2020. Such a significant drop comes with serious financial consequences, which in turn brings on health issues. The HIA Charitable Foundation was introduced in 2012 to improve health and welfare outcomes in the building industry. This philanthropic ideal is the foundation and cornerstone of the foundation. The foundation has provided much needed funds to research into asbestos-related diseases and other health-related issues. From 2015, the HIA Charitable Foundation has focused on a nationwide medical condition that affects 1 in 4 people employed in our construction industry. That is, depression and anxiety, which in some cases leads to suicide. We wanted to ensure that within our industry help was available to those who need it. What we saw was that construction workers were more than twice as likely to take their own lives. We had to do something about this. We were fortunate to be able to partner with Beyond Blue with the aim that together we could fight depression, anxiety and reduce the rate of suicide amongst workers in the building industry. Our initial donations to Beyond Blue assisted in funding valuable, groundbreaking research into why our building industry was so vulnerable to these mental issues. It was groundbreaking because no one else had undertaken this type of research. What came from the research was extremely valuable and allowed us as a partnership to develop tools and programs that can and will combat the issues. This webinar is being led by Michael O'Hanlon, the Beyond Blue Workplace Engagement Manager. Michael works with industry associations and will provide the tools to empower you to make changes to your workplace or in your personal lives. Importantly, he will assist you with how you can identify the telltale signs of your work colleagues if they are going through a rough time. It is important that you are aware of the signs and symptoms that indicate someone is at risk of or may be experiencing anxiety or depression. Anxiety and depression are serious health issues at the best of times. Presently, with the economic turmoil that we are confronting, the incidence of mental health issues is on the increase. Our federal government is grappling not only with economic battles, but also a health pandemic. Our industry is caught up in this maelstrom and we are not immune. I'm not immune and you're not immune. Mental health not only affects the person who is experiencing it, but there is a flow-on effect to their partner, family members, friends and work colleagues. Untreated, depression is a major risk factor for suicide and the rates are staggering, particularly for men. The impact of mental health on a workplace is immense. If someone is not able to work or be able to work effectively, this has a serious negative impact on the individual, the team, the workplace and the clients. We want to take preventative measures that provide support to the individuals that are suffering, and we want to empower you to assist them and others to get through their health issue. As an industry, we are very good at innovation, productivity, recognising quality building methods, recognising quality practitioners. We now need to become very good at identifying mental health issues and providing support for those of us in the industry that need help. The HIA Charitable Foundation believes that mental health starts where you work, play and live. I'm now passing the baton to Shaman, who will make our connection to Michael.
Great to hear everything that the HIA Charitable Foundation are doing to support our industry. Now I'll hand over controls to our expert presenter, Michael from Beyond Blue. Over to you, Michael.
Good morning. Thank you, Shaman, and hopefully you can all see my screen at the moment. It's a pleasure to be able to have the opportunity to present to all of you this morning, this afternoon, depending which part of Australia you happen to be in. And as you just heard, to build on the partnership that exists between Beyond Blue and the HIA Foundation. Today, I want to look at mental health from the perspective of particularly small business owners in the industry, and how it, particularly in this time, it can be a key to the survival of your business. I'd also like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners on the lands that we're meeting on today. For me, it's the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respects to their elders past, present, and emerging. So what I'd like to do to start with is a quick look at the topics that I'll cover today. I want to start by just exploring a common understanding of mental health and well-being, reinforce why it's relevant to our business, your business, and a very brief look at an integrated approach at a high level to give you some insight to what will follow in terms of the tools and resources that are available for small businesses and particularly small business owners, and touch on the stresses that we're all feeling at the moment relating to COVID-19 and some of the strategies that we can adopt around that. And finally, I have some time at the end for some questions and answers. So let's understand, what is this thing called mental health? Many people, when I ask this question in an audience, I'll get answers that mental health is depression, it's anxiety, it's schizophrenia, it's suicide. Then I'll ask the question, so what is a mental health condition? And the audience kind of pauses and says, well, we just described those. So mental health is a positive construct. Here's a definition from the World Health Organization. It's a state of well-being in which we can realize our own ability, cope with the normal stresses of life, work productively and fruitfully, and make a contribution to our community. There's no reference in this definition to mental health conditions. Mental health is a much bigger construct. It's just like physical health. We have physical health and we have physical health conditions. And think the same way about mental health. So when I talk about mental health today, I'm referencing mental health for everybody in the industry, everybody in Australia. To give you another way of looking at that, this spectrum, which highlights that mental health is not a static state. The green end of this spectrum is where we're well, healthy, productive people. The middle amber section, just think of, okay, we're under a bit of psychological stress. Could be from home, could be from work, could be from a whole range of reasons. And if we are in touch with ourselves enough and know what are the signs and symptoms, what are our triggers, what supports we can fall back on, we can take ourselves back into the green space. Or if we're fortunate to work with a team or a workplace that has an insight into mental health itself, our colleagues or our manager or supervisor will recognize changes in our behavior and support us and guide us to move back to good mental health. At the extreme end of the spectrum are those individuals who unfortunately may experience a mental health condition and be diagnosed with a mental health condition. Now, as I said, everybody moves up and down this spectrum. It's not a static state. The numbers of people experiencing poor mental health in Australia, I'll come on to in a minute. But if you look at this spectrum, about 46% of Australians at some stage in their life will experience a poor mental health condition. So they'll move down to that amber red end of the spectrum. So mental health applies to everybody. It's not static. It changes every day due to different influences on our life, just like our physical health does. And we'll come on to some of the ways we can recognize that and some of the strategies we can adopt. So you might ask, oh, okay, what's this got to do with my business? I understand mental health. If we have a look at some stats, and this is the only statistic slide I'm going to show you today. At any point in time, there's about 3 million Australians living with depression and/or anxiety. And every day in Australia, 8 people take their own lives, which is twice the national rota, and 6 of those are men. So guys, if I can just be very stereotypical for a moment, whatever we're doing or whatever we're not doing isn't helping our mental health, in that it's driving 6 of us every day to take our own lives. As I mentioned a moment ago, that 3 million people is not static. It shifts every year, every month, and 46% of us will experience a mental health condition of some sort during our lifetime. One of the biggest barriers to people taking action to support their mental health is stigma. And here's a definition of the impact of stigma from a group of our Blue Voices members, which is a group we have to people who've experienced depression or anxiety, or people who care for those who have, and provide advice to us around programs and initiatives. And this person has said that in reality, the stigma of mental illness is in some ways worse than the illness itself. Now that is saying something, because just sharing with you, someone who's experienced a mental health condition, it is not a good place to be. And this individual is saying the stigma is worse than that. And unless it can be removed to a degree that it does not become a barrier to our acknowledgement, treatment, and hope for the future, then reduction of some mental illnesses will be nothing but a pipe dream. So how we respond, how we react to others, what our thoughts are around stigma has a huge impact on those around us. Now, I said I was only going to give you one set of stats, but I'm going to give you a second set. Translating those into workplaces, 1 in 5 of our employees at any one time is likely to be impacted by poor mental health. Poor mental health, I'm saying they're in that amber or red end of the spectrum. They don't need to have a diagnosed condition. And there's good news about mental health, mentally healthy workplaces, and there's lots of research that highlights that those workplaces that have the characteristics of a culture that is supportive of good mental health, they are an employer of choice, with 71% of employees identifying those sort of workplaces as somewhere they would want to work. And if you're looking at it from a purely business perspective, that for every dollar invested in effective mental health initiatives, there's a $4.20 return. Pretty good return given what's going on in banks and even my super fund at this point in time. Of course, there's also the impact in terms of legislative obligations, and I'm not going to go into each of these in particular today, but to highlight that the obligations relate to both the employer and the employee. They're those areas around work health and safety, where we're obliged to eliminate risks and take care of our own safety, and it applies to psychological risks as well as physical risks. So when we're doing audits around our workplace for health and safety audits, we need to be looking and identifying psychological risks. Discrimination and disability touches on making reasonably practical adjustments. Privacy Act relates to disclosure of personal information, and bullying there is legislation around that, and there's a definition there, and it's a high risk factor for poor mental health. So the approach we take is an integrated approach. And what I mean by an integrated approach is we want an approach that touches everybody in that spectrum. We're not just talking about the people who may have a mental health condition down the red end, or people who may be under some psychological distress. We want to also keep the people in the green in the green. So an integrated approach applies to everybody in your workplace. And in a simple way, that looks at promoting positive mental health. What are the things we can do to stay healthy? Protection, that's identifying those risk factors, either eliminating them if we can. If we can't, then it's putting in place protective factors and to support those who may be under stress. And support is for the individuals who are experiencing a mental health condition. What are the things we can do? Where do we direct them support? How do we have conversations with them? And just to flip that around a little bit, apologies, the spectrum's turned around the other way, it's from a different source, but it looks at it from a perspective of here's some of the characteristics you might see under each of those areas of the spectrum. And you notice that the 20% is covered by that workers' compensation, absenteeism, turnover kind of area. The majority of our focus, the majority of people are in that healthy and thriving end of the spectrum. Hence, we need an approach that touches on everybody. So what is this magic, healthy, mentally healthy workplace? At a very simple level, it fosters a positive workplace culture. So a workplace that manages stress and other risks to mental health by identifying them, eliminating them if possible, putting in protective factors, supporting individuals that may have a mental health condition or experiencing mental health stress, no matter what the cause. It's not something we turn off when we walk into work or walk home again, where the source of the cause is. If its source is outside of work, then clearly there's not a lot we can do to resolve it, but we can guide people to get support. It will impact on their productivity irrespective of the cause. And taking a zero tolerance approach to discrimination, be that around stigma or bullying or any form of discrimination. There are some well-known protective factors associated with well-being, and this slide just gives you some ideas from both an individual, because we have an individual responsibility that is around things like good physical health, strong social supports, networking, good sleep quality, and using and participating in available supports. From a workplace perspective, it's a workplace that is supportive, it's got a good team environment, high levels of support, a degree of a balanced and flexible work life, low levels of stress, gossip and bullying. Gossip and spreading rumors is another risk factor for poor mental health, and you can see a number of others there. So that's the definition I wanted to give you around just setting a scene around what is mental health, how it impacts a workplace, and some broad ideas of taking an integrated approach. The bulk of the time I really want to spend on is looking at tools and resources with a focus on small business owners, because we often talk about the employees of small businesses, but clearly small business owners have that extra level of risk of, you may have your house mortgage against the business, you are responsible for employing people, you may have employed them for a long period of time, you're trying to keep the work coming in, and we've just heard at the introduction the challenges that exist with that currently. So it's important that small business owners look after their mental health as well as that of their staff. And in general, some of the things I'll talk about now are applicable to either, but I'll highlight some of the things that small business owners can do. So why are small business owners and freelancers or contractors very important? Well, simple. 97% of businesses in Australia are sole operators and small businesses. There's 2.3 million businesses in that category in Australia, employing almost half the Australian workforce, about 4.7 million people. So it's a key element in Australia, it's a key element in employment, and from Beyond Blue's perspective, it's a key sector that we need to get our message out to. Hence, the partnership with the HIA Foundation gives us the ability to reach a much broader audience like we are today than we would at any other time. And I'll be referring to this resource on the right-hand side of the page, and it is available to you in addition to a copy of the presentation after the webinar, and the links that you'll see in my slide today will also be live in the PDF version of the PowerPoint that you'll receive. Now, I want to talk about mental health and its relationship to businesses, and in particular, business planning. So a mental health strategy or a mental health approach, let's drop the magic word strategy, is an integral part, needs to be an integral part of any business plan. It needs to be part of your business continuity, part of your risk management, part of your people management, and therefore it's a key to your survival and success, just as OH&S is, because mental health is an integral component of occupational health and safety. And when you as a business owner don't look after your mental health, then the impact on your business is quite significant. So what are your plans around business continuity if you or a member of your team develop a mental health condition or their productivity drops off due to being under some level of psychological distress? What is your risk management strategy? Your mental health and the mental health of your team is just like any other asset in your business. We plan for things like maintenance on our equipment. We plan for when things arrive or don't arrive on site. We put risk management strategies around that. We need to do the same for our mental health. Now, to assist businesses and business owners doing that, Beyond Blue has developed a resource which is focused on small business owners and the ways they can improve their mental health and well-being at work. So this is the resource that will be available to you, and I'm going to refer to it in the next few slides. You can see it touches on that concept of the spectrum I spoke about. It gives you some hints around how to speak to someone you're concerned about, when to speak, what to say, what not to say, what are the boundaries in those discussions, what are you responsible for, what are you not responsible for. There's a lot of detail in there that it provides you links to that I won't go into today, but they're certainly available there. It also has a section on signs and symptoms or changes in behavior across the spectrum. And the second handout today covers this exact slide, is on I think it's a one-page or double-sided PDF file. But you can see for each of those areas of the spectrum I've spoken about, the green, the amber, and the red, what are some of the personal signs that an individual may be moving out of the green into that light amber? What are the kind of signs they might show at work? What actions can you take from a personal perspective? What actions can you take in a workplace? And each of those blue hyperlinks will be in the PDF. They're active hyperlinks. You click on those and they'll take you to where you can get some more information and resources relating to those particular personal signs or work signs. And you can see it cascades down to individuals in the amber zone and those down in the red end of the spectrum. It's a great resource. I encourage you to explore this, get a deeper understanding for yourself, so you do understand what are your triggers, what are your signs, what are the things you can do to look after yourself as an individual, as a business owner, and what are the signs and symptoms so you can be on the lookout for your work teams, your colleagues, and what are the things you can do to support them. Another section of this resource is the bit in the middle here, a personal wellbeing and a workplace wellbeing plan. Now, I'd like to just take you through the personal wellbeing plan. Now, you might think, oh my God, another plan I've got to do. Why do I need to do this? Again, I would take you back to how do you are your most important asset in your business. Why would you not have a plan in place to protect your most important asset, yourself? So let's have a quick look through this plan. And you don't need to do it in the details that are here, but I'd really encourage you to have a look at this and step through it. So it starts off with, what are my reasons for having a small business? As simple as, hey, I need it to pay the bills and put food on the table. It's something I enjoy doing. I enjoy working outdoors with people. This is why I do it. Or building something significant is a great achievement for me. So remind yourself of why you're doing this. Then think of what are some of the triggers that may raise your stress levels. What are some of the things that happen in your work and in your personal life that may that act as triggers for poor mental health? And there's a number that are listed here. You'll know them better than I do. Things starting with, do you have enough funds to start the business? Paperwork, compliance documentation, going out and building and maintaining a customer base. Cash flow, I imagine, is a big risk at the moment. Competitor activities, the ebbs and flows, getting support for your business when you need it. You may be challenges meeting the financial expectations of your partner or spouse, or just having enough time for your family and friends. And you'll know what they are, but if you can identify what these are, that starts to give you an indication of what to look out for. And then look at, well, what are your warning signs that these triggers are impacting on you? And here's a breakup of some of the personal signs and then you can see there things like getting more irritable, more angry, anxious, procrastinating, a bit more forgetful, sleep's becoming more difficult, withdrawing from social situations, low energy, and perhaps increased use of alcohol. Similarly, these translate into things at work for either yourself, again, or for someone you work with. So difficulty in concentrating, not meeting deadlines, lower than normal standards, more antisocial, not joining in with the guys like you used to, slow paying your regulatory expenses, and you may become negative or not solution focused. So we've got the triggers, we've got the warning signs. Now, what are some of the things we can do to improve my situation? What are some of the protective factors that we can put in place? And again, here's a list of some, but you will know them better for yourself. Be realistic. Organize your business systems. Understand what others know, that small business isn't easy. Running a small business is not an easy thing to do. Keep the hours you work in check. The idea of burning the candle at both ends and working extra long hours, in the end of the day, is not a sustainable outcome, and two, it's a less productive outcome. You become tired, you become worn down, you become physically tired, and from a mental health perspective, it's not good. So you do need to keep the hours in check. Investing in the right gear, talking to banks and ATOs and creditors, maintaining in touch with your families and friends. During a break, give them a buzz, give them a call, see how they're traveling. Your interests outside of work, the physical side, eating well, prioritizing sleep, staying physically fit. Looking at your well-being plan, coming back and checking on it regularly, being aware of those warning signs. What are some of the positive things you can do to improve the situation in your workplace? Sometimes doing things from others can give you a real buzz that you don't get otherwise. So offering advice and support to other small business owners can be a real positive thing. Grabbing that coffee to check in with suppliers and work contacts, taking that time out to build your social connections. Now, I talked about a risk management plan. So what is your plan if you are unable to work? You may need to take some time out, or you may need to just slow down what you're doing at work. So it's important to develop a plan for that situation. What is your contingency? So can you put your work on hold? Taking out income protection and insurance? talking to your financial advisor about what is your safety net that you do have available, talking to your accountant, business advisor, or mentor about developing a financial plan as support for you if needed, outsourcing your work or job sharing wherever possible. Talk to your clients and other stakeholders about the situation. Be open, and you may be often very surprised about what they can do to support you. Check in with ATO and Centrelink about their support and advice. Contact the relevant government agencies and contact the Department of Human Services to see if there's any benefits available for you. So just having that, gone through that process and having this plan in place means if you do get to a point, there is less stress because you have this to fall back on. What is your return to work plan? How many hours will you work? What tasks can you undertake? Will you work at work? Will you work in the office? Will you work from home? How do you communicate this to your customer, suppliers, and colleagues? All of these things, if you've thought through beforehand, again, is your contingency, your risk management plan. Identify who can be supportive for you, be it family, friends, or work contacts. This is social connectivity. Social isolation, which often happens when you experience a mental health condition, is one of the biggest risks to your recovery. So who is a work contact, a coffee buddy you can sit down and talk to? Do you have a close friend or family member, a mentor or a business advisor? Is there someone in HIA you can talk to, or a local community group? In the end of the day, if you do need professional support, be aware of who they are and where they are, your GP or mental health professional. If you work in a larger organisation that has an employee assistance program, there's that to call on. In the absence of an employee assistance program, there is always the Beyond Blue forums, which are an online chat forum, which is moderated by Beyond Blue, and we have our support service number, 1300 22 4636, that is available 24/7, and you can talk to a mental health professional there and get some advice, reference to some resources and what supports are available in your area. In a crisis situation, call Lifeline, 13 11 14. And as a lot of the people in the building and housing industry will be men, there is a Men's Line Australia, which is set up particularly recognising the approach and the language that men often take and need is different, and recognising that Men's Line has been put in place. And there are online and other phone resources on the HeadsUp website, which I'll come on to in a moment. So Beyond Blue has concentrated all of its workplace mental health resources on a website called HeadsUp. That's headsup.org.au. So HeadsUp is, if I can be so bold as to say, was designed to be that one-stop shop for everything you ever wanted to know about mental health in a workplace context. On the left-hand side there, you can see the 4 key headings that are covered by HeadsUp. It's a healthy workplaces, which gives you much more information about what I've touched on today about how do you build the culture of a mentally healthy workplace? What are the elements? What can leaders and business owners do? How do you develop this approach? The second major tab talks about your mental health. This is some of the information I've spoken to today, but goes into in more detail around what is good mental health, how to look for changes in behaviour. Do you disclose to your employer how you might go about doing that? So this is very much about the individual. Supporting others is about how you reach out to someone you may be concerned about. So if you notice one of your work buddies is exhibiting some of those changes in behaviour I touched on earlier, this gives you the information around how do you approach that individual, how do you have the conversation. There's some great examples in there, there's videos around this, there's guides around how to do it, what to say, what not to say, what is your responsibilities, where they start, where they end. So if you're concerned about that, dive into that section. And the last section is training and resources. And I'll just jump onto that for a moment. These are all evidence-informed resources, and all of them are free. And here's some of them you can see here. There's personal case stories, case studies and personal stories. Personal stories are experiences of individuals who may have experienced a mental health condition in a workplace environment, what they went through, how it impacted them, the support they may or may not have received, and what finally got them on the journey to recovery. So it's a story of hope, recovery, and resilience. And there is on the website one of an apprentice bricklayer that is very relevant to your industry. There is a whole raft of education and training that's hard copy resources that you can download from the website that give you some more guidance around how to have those discussions that you can have on hand. If you want to order any of those, you can order them from the online catalogue, and then we'll ship them out to you at no cost. There's a suite of online programs that you can work through, looking at examples of how to have a conversation. Again, a suite of webinars that we've put up there that cover what I've spoken about today and a range of other topics. Toolbox talks about how to have the chat on site. Great resource that's available freely. There's news and social posts and a lot of further reading. We often hear that it's easy to see physical hazards, but these mental health hazards are hard to identify. What the hell are they? Well, in our experience, they're often easy to see, but we're not used to recognizing them as hazards. I think that's the change in focus we need. So let me give you some examples. Some of the hazards from an individual are overwork, poor clarity, role clarity, lack of skills or capability. You can see some there from an organizational focus, poor communication, poor environment, discrimination, which can be bullying, under-resourcing, and some of the occupational risks, remote work, physical hazards, trauma, customer aggression. They're the kind of hazards that relate to poor mental health. These are the risk factors that exist in workplaces. And there's a suite of protective factors that go with each of these, which are obviously the flip side of those hazards. There's the ones for individuals and roles. Here's some from an organizational perspective, and here's some from an occupational perspective. So it's that trick of recognizing that these hazards that we know are there are actual risk factors, and that there are protective factors relating to those. Now, if you really want to dive into this in more detail, Safe Work Australia have released a national guidance material on a systematic approach to meeting your duties in relation to work-related psychological health and safety. So it recognises that poor psychological work health and safety can lead to both psychological and physical injuries. So this is the guide if you want more information around what should you be looking for on site when you do an OH&S audit, because this is part of an OH&S audit. What are those things you should be looking for? What can you do to either eliminate the mental health hazards, or as I talk about them here, the psychological hazards? If you can't eliminate them, what can you do to reduce them? I said I'd touch a little bit on COVID-19 and mental health. And I want to just look at COVID-19. I want you to think about COVID-19 as just another risk factor, except it's a damn big one. And it's an external one that we don't have a lot of control over. But it's a risk factor that can, it's an example of a risk factor that can impact in a workplace. And so the strategies are similar. So I've mentioned it's a universal risk factor. I've mentioned that, well, sorry, I haven't mentioned yet, Beyond Blue has developed a specific coronavirus mental wellbeing support service, which is a separate support line, 1-800-512-348, which was set up because our other support service got an increase of about 30-40% in its calls, primarily relating to mental health and the coronavirus. And so we were funded to set up a very specific support service, and this is it. There is also a website relating to it, which is the blue hyperlink there. And there is other links, and there's one there, working from home, which may not be quite so relevant to you there. But there are a number of other links on this page around how you work during the pandemic. What are some of the things to look for in a workplace? How do you manage the psychological distress that is occurring due to the pandemic? And it's happening to everybody. This is one time where stigma should have no place to play. It's not happening to them, it's happening to us and everybody. So what we're seeing, and there's some observations I saw recently from KPMG, that some of the characteristics that are happening in the business world, and you would know these far better than I do, but cash liquidity is becoming critical for survival. Business continuity plans need to be rethought in relation to the pandemic and lockdowns, and business continuity plans need to include the mental health perspective. How are we going to deal with new levels of ambiguity, balancing the things we can and can't control? And how do we balance the health of our employees, both physical, mental, and economic, with the viability of the business? And you would be much more up across that challenge right now than I would be. And how do you operate in an environment when organisations just trying to stay open whilst planning through the future through a number of cash saving tactics? So that's what the business environment we're in, and mental health is an integral part of that. So here's some of the things that can help us in this environment. Seek support. This is a time where it's okay to not feel okay. There is no stigma around that. Stay connected. The risk of social isolation at this time during lockdown has been enormous. Okay, we're freeing up at the moment, but staying connected and how we stay connected is critical to our ongoing mental health, particularly if we find, which we don't want to, but there's a second stage of the pandemic. Talk to people. Don't just sit on social media typing. Get out there and talk to people, either like we are today, get on the phone and talk. There's a whole different dynamic. Get sweaty, get out there and exercise, do things that are good for your physical health. Clearly, financial stress is real, and your sector is facing that in a very big way at the moment, as are many others. So talk about it. Do some of those things that I referenced in your personal wellbeing plan. Who are you going to check in with? Who are the people you can talk to? Are there people in HIA? What are the services HIA provide? Who are your mates? Who are your colleagues? Who are the people you work with for a long time? Who are you going to check in about yourself and on them? Routine's very important. Play your part, be part of the solution, and take breaks. This idea of working long periods without breaks is not sustainable and will not be good for your physical or mental health in the long term. If you or others you're working for experience work loss, then here's some of the suggestions around how you can approach that. These are extraordinary times, so be aware that be kind. You need to be kind to yourself. That they connect with family and friends, maintaining that routine, as I mentioned, exercise, clearing your mind. And if you look at this in those integrated approach I touched on earlier, protect, promote, support, you can see here some of the things you can do under those headings. So key ones, managing the flow of information. There is so much information out there at the moment from a whole raft of sources that you can spend all day on social media, which is not good for you. Look at it once, pick reliable channels and stick with that. So in summary, I'd like to just look at how a different way of looking at this, stepping right back from all the language of what promote, protect, support is. Promote is keeping our bucket full of those things that support our mental and physical health. Protection is what are the things that we know will put dents in our bucket and hence reduce its capacity. We've talked about some of those psychological risk factors, similarly for your physical health. Support, okay, the bucket sprung a leak, it's draining. We need to see somebody to help us repair the bucket. So think of it in those simple terms. And here's some things that we can do right now under each of those headings. Again, you're seeing some of the things I've spoken about before, the connection, the sleep, food, exercise, protect, physical distancing, your planning, your budgeting and financial planning, and support is knowing what support's there, using them, self-care, and helping others. That I've been speaking for quite a while now, and I appreciate under these kind of conditions, that's quite demanding for yourselves to listen. So I'm going to stop there. Thank you for your listening. There are my contact details. There are the links to the HeadsUp website, the Beyond Blue website, the coronavirus mental wellbeing support service. There's a link there to a how-to guide for the larger organisations that may be listening, the link to the Safe Work Australia document I referenced, and to our online training and resources catalogue. So thank you very much for your attention. I hope you found that useful. We very much value the partnership with HIA and our ability to be able to engage with you in this way. So I'm now going to hand back to Sharman and hopefully answer any questions or comments that you may have.
Thanks so much, Michael. That was really, really fantastic. We actually have received some questions that I'll put to you now, and we'll just have you answer verbally. One that's come up similarly is, I'm so busy just running my business in general. Why do I need to make the effort to create a mental health plan? It's another thing I simply don't have time to do.
Yep, great question, great comment, and something we hear about so often. And for myself, personal wellbeing plan, yeah, great, but do I do it? Do I stick with it? Hey, we all have that challenge. My answer to that is that if you consider yourself as a key asset to your business, you take yourself out of the business, what happens to it? Just as if you take any key piece of equipment out of your business, the impact on that, your business. So we have plans and strategies to look after our assets. This is a plan or strategy to look after yourself. If you don't look after yourself, you're not going to, one, be able to look after anybody else, both personally and in your business. And secondly, you are probably one of the biggest risks to the success of your business. Now, developing that plan, I'm not suggesting you need to sit down for an hour and go through that in detail. All I'm highlighting with that plan is a structured way to think about what are your triggers, how do you know when they're occurring, what are you going to do about it when you see them, and what are your strategies if you do have to take time off work. It's as simple as that. And having that done will take the stress off you if you don't have those kind of plans in place and you do become unwell. So I appreciate the challenge, but I'd really suggest very strongly to you to consider this as an integral part of your business planning, your business continuity, just as much as you do your contractor management, your supplier management. This is self-management.
And there's another few that we received. These ones kind of flow on into each other. Yeah. The first question was, how does a leader support a worker who has ongoing mental health issues, which is also affecting their physical health?
And that so often happens. I think the first step is having the skills and confidence to know how to have the conversation with that individual. And I've referenced some of the resources where you can get that information on the HeadsUp website, and that PDF document that you have will get, following the webinar, also will link you to those areas. The first thing is to be able to sit down with that individual and literally just have a conversation. And that conversation can be along the lines of, and I'll use myself as the example, Michael, just want to have a yarn with you. I've noticed you don't seem to be yourself. You're not quite as productive, or you're not joining in with the guys. Some of those behavior changes I mentioned, and just concerned how you're going. Is there something we can help you with? So it's just like if I left work on Friday and I walked off site fine, and I walked back on site on Monday and I was limping, I think somebody would say to me, oh, what have you done to yourself? And I might, roll down the socks and say, oh, I just bruised the ankle playing soccer with the kids. And you might say, oh, I did something like that, and actually I tore a ligament. Have you considered seeing a doctor? We'd be all very happy to have that conversation. It's the same kind of conversation, except it's about a topic as society we're not really comfortable about having traditionally. But apply those same principles. It's a non-threatening, open conversation. Now, the challenge comes when the individual may say to you, I'm fine, none of your business, go away. Okay, they're entitled to say that. A couple of things. One, you don't know what your conversation may plant a seed in their mind. They do go and do something, and you may see their behavior improve. The challenge comes when, if this continues and you may have a couple of conversations and the impact starts to impact other team members and impact on your business overall, at some point you then need to move the conversation to one of closer to, hey, if everything's okay, or there's nothing you can share with me that we can do to support you, then this is impacting on the business, or it may be impacting on the health and safety of the business. So we need to do something about it. So you're then heading into the more traditional performance management approach. When you do that, there's no silver bullet. I can't tell you when to do that. I've seen it differ enormously across many businesses. I know some of the suppliers in your industry support people for 6-12 months. I'm not suggesting you need to do that. Others, it works with your business and your business demands. You need to work that out, but I would strongly encourage you to have taken that first approach of having the conversation, exploring what you can do to assist them, knowing how you can direct them to support if they need it, and keeping track of those conversations. Because if you come to the point where you may need to terminate someone's employment and you could end up in front of Fair Work, at least you will have a documented approach of, you tried all these things along the way and this is the response you've got. Because it's all about what would a reasonable employer do. And these days, this information is publicly available, and it's no longer acceptable in the courts for a manager or a business owner to say, well, I didn't know about that. Because this is, as I said, it's publicly available. This is what is expected of a reasonable employer. So that's a bit of a long answer, but the first step is understand how to have that conversation in a non-confrontational, supportive way, in an environment over a coffee or something like that. And there are lots of examples of that on the HeadsUp website.
Thank you. I'm conscious of time. I've got 2 more questions. A quick one which connects into what you've just touched on. We had a question that was, how long is a small organisation expected to support a worker with mental health issues? I know you have touched on that, but I wanted to put that one to you specifically.
So I guess in addition to everything I've just said, the legislation, and I'm not an expert in the legislation, but it's all built around reasonably practicable approaches and adjustments. And reasonably practicable is basically, in my understanding, the legal way of saying doing things that don't drive your business to the wall. So there is a limit. what that is, it's this vague, reasonably practicable. So if you're able to demonstrate the things you've done, the steps you took, and that they are within the abilities, the financial abilities, the cultural, the timing abilities of your business to do those things, and you did that, then that's what is a reasonable time. For a larger business, possibly longer. For a small business, clearly it may be shorter, but there's no magic number. Maybe your HIA can give you some more specific advice around that, the legal teams there.
We always suggest that if you have a query around any workplace employment issues like that, contact our office and one of our workplace advisors can get back to you to offer advice. I'll give one more question before we wind up. We had a question put to us that is from an individual. It's, I'm cautious about informing my employer about my anxiety disorder. I'm worried that they'll think less of me or think I'm not capable of doing my job. Do I need to tell them?
Sure. This is a classic example of stigma. What will my employer think? And this is the barrier to them seeking help and support. No, you do not need to disclose to your employer if you're experiencing a mental health condition, except if, there's always exceptions. One, it impacts on your inherent ability to do the job. And two, if it creates a health and safety risk to yourself or others, and then you are obliged to tell them. Because many people experience mental health conditions and are highly productive individuals in the workplace because they manage, they've either sought professional help and they can manage their condition and they can be highly productive. Think of someone with diabetes, they go see somebody, they get the appropriate medication, they do the appropriate testing and they manage themselves. They're as productive as anybody else. You can do exactly the same with a mental health condition. So no, you don't. However, if you don't, then it's very difficult for your employer to assist you or help you if you go through a period that you're not at your best. So it's open-ended. There is a section on the HeadsUp website under your mental health that is a little tool that gives you some guidance around disclosing or not disclosing. So thank you for those questions.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Michael. Look, we've already received some feedback in the questions. Just thanking you so much for all of the information. It's been so useful and very relevant during these times at the moment. Before we end today, I'd just like to play a short video from Pino again, just thanking you again for all of your hard work and all of the work that Beyond Blue and HIA do together. Give me one moment and I'll play the video.
I thank each and every one of you for participating in this webinar and trust that there were some learnings that you can take away to assist you personally or that you might find useful in being able to assist others at work, at play or where you live. We're facing challenging times and with everyone helping we will get through these awful times. Together we can make a difference. Should you need any information about the HIA Charitable Foundation or would like to make a financial donation, please contact one of our HIA regional offices near you. Also, I want you to look out for some other initiatives that we will be launching during 2020. Finally, I want to thank Michael on a very professional and informative presentation made on behalf of Beyond Blue and the HIA Charitable Foundation. Once again, I thank you for your attendance and wish you goodbye. Thank you.